Hey guys, that walk is a long way. I'm the one responsible for travelling down from Cairns. That's nearly that far. My name's Tony Matchett, based at JCU in Cairns, and my role there in the TNQ Drought Hub is to help researchers, startups and scale-ups through a pathway from innovation to commercialisation of bring really cool ideas to life. But I thought, given the way that I look like this guy on the screen, that looking at that past and taking it into the future is a very interesting topic that I'd love to share. So my background in applied science is around plants and soils. That would normally give me the qualification as a dirt doctor, but I'm far from a doctor, so that makes me dirty. Well, not quite. But what I get really interested in, and I'm absolutely fascinated by, is some of the hidden gems that are in some of the plants that we see around us every single day. And the more I get exposed to them and understand them through really good storytelling, I am absolutely amazed. And so it's that storytelling and knowledge sharing and continuing that way that we've done that for thousands and thousands of years is what I love. Now, I come to a town like Townsville, where sometimes facts don't get in the way of a good story, particularly if you're the mayor. Something like that, just making things up because I can come from Cairns. Okay, so storytelling is what I love, and I think we can all learn from. And I put this picture up thinking about me 30 years ago telling a story about the animals to my nephew. And then I found myself only 3 months ago telling a story about Jack and the Beanstalk to his son, and obviously my dog Oscar. And it's storytelling through innovation is basically my job. So I have a pretty cool job. And as I said, I drove down from Cairns yesterday, and I actually got caught for DUI, which is driving under the influence of innovation. I get in more trouble from my wife at looking at trees and plants as we're driving along the highway than I do at my phone. But imagine this, 70,000 years before COVID, or BC, there was a group in Africa that decided that there was a better place and a better way. And they thought to themselves, and this is, I don't know what accent they used in East Africa at the time, but they said, listen, if we were to leave Africa and get away from the hippopotamus, the giraffe, probably not the crocodiles, and there'll probably still be a few cheetahs. But if we get out of Africa, there's a better way to do this. I hear that there's this continent that's been hidden for 1 million years in the sun. And in there is plants and trees that have been captivated with all of these amazing things inside them that can be a future use to the population of the world. Pretty good for an East African accent, right? 70,000 BC. And so some of those stories, after 70,000 years, of the oldest population of people living on a planet in an environment for 70,000 years, and have not just survived, but thrived, based on the hidden gems inside the plants. And so in 1889, the equivalent of the almanac that Biff stole in Back to the Future 2, and was able to make profit out of those hidden gems, those stories were written down in terms of what plants had, besides being beautiful with flowers and leaves and everything, they had some uses for things like medicines, food, culinary, seasonal indicators. There's just so much to what plants hide within them that allowed, for 70,000 years, the people on this continent to thrive. And I think that's really incredible. We've now got the opportunity to turn something old into new again through innovation. My father was an inspiration, or still is, to me all the time, in terms of telling me stories that I've learned from and how to make something old new again. An example I remember is when he was young, in the outer suburbs of Melbourne, he used to go to the news agency after his paper run and grab yesterday's papers. He'd then go to the train station, and that's all the workers heading into Fitzroy, and from Fitzroy into Flinders Street in Melbourne used to sell them yesterday's news just as they were jumping onto the train. And that way he was able to make money, but something new out of something old. 152 years ago, I started to see some real opportunities through conversation that I'm actually having now with people involved in an expedition into Cape York. Now these guys, as you can see, they're all well bearded. And their tour guide, who was a recent start-up and decided there's an opportunity to take these white fellas around this broad country of ours and be their tour guide because they don't know what they're doing. And some of the expeditions decided a guide, where we're going, we don't need a guide. And so people like Burke and Wills didn't go too well. But the Hahn expedition took Jerry with them. And Jerry was not only a local tour guide, and his family's from Girramay country, which is halfway between Townsville and Cairns near Cardwell, but he also turned out to be their medicine man, their physical therapist, their fisherman, and any time they had an ailment, he was the go-to man because he knew what remedies were in those plants, where to go for water, where to find food, or how to use those plants to make food. It was like a great Scott moment, but the real opportunities weren't discovered for years. So there's been a lot of missed opportunities over the last 150 years, but they're starting to come to life. When they've been blatantly obvious in front of us, but we've missed them. I remember a story of reading about some of the more recent history of Australia that relates to that first cartoon about an arrow pointing back to the entrance to the cave. Not actually what the arrow could have been used for. And it was an Irish convict that wanted to escape Sydney, and so he drew the arrow onto a piece of paper and said, "Hey, to get out of here, we'll just follow the arrow. Oh, geez, it's a cliff. Oh, look, the arrow's pointing that way now, let's go that way." Anyway, that's a really bad Irish accent. But what I do realise now is that opportunity does knock more than once. On that 1872 Hahn expedition, I wanted to show you a few of the hidden gems for the next 5 minutes on what's hidden in some of these plants. And these first two are what we would now call oilseed plants, but have hidden within them amazing antibiotic, antimicrobial, anti-swelling compounds. Someone like L'Oreal Paris takes the oil from the loofah plant and turns that into a whole range of high-value skincare products. If you read the history books, that says that loofah plant comes from India, when actually, in 152 years ago in Cape York, before there was too many white fellas walking around, loofah was an indigenous plant of Australia. Yet we get no recognition of that. Or the candle nut, again, native to Australia and has been used in indigenous foods and medicines for thousands of generations, is now the state tree of Hawaii called kukui. And we get no benefit out of that. The only benefit we get out of Hawaii is pinching their pineapple and putting it onto a pizza. Some of the other uses of those oils we see in these plants are, as I said, for the remedy of just simple things like an itchy beer or hair problems. Not that I have any of it, nor if you're wanting to be disguised as the Mayor of Townsville and you need to get your moustache to look better. Or another plant, not necessarily Australian, but it just shows you the power of plants and if we could change the future, what we might do differently. So one of the stars of Back to the Future suffers from a debilitating disease called Parkinson's disease. And that is interesting because for the last 15 years of my research in terms of trying to improve soils, I've used crops like velvet bean, which are legumes, to bring life to soil to reduce diseases. Now, velvet bean which is not some really cool hipster name for a new coffee blend, but Mucuna purulens, inside that seed is levodopa, which is the precursor to dopamine, which is a registered drug on the PBS to treat Parkinson's disease. And I can just imagine just playing around, because there would have been jokes all over Back to the Futures in their off-takes, is Doc in the back there going, "Hey, Marty! Oh, Alex! Oh, Michael! What's your name? Take these dopamine drugs. You'll need them in the future." So, Back to the Future, I'm interested to see if they do anything that in Back to the Future 4. But that's for another story. But as I'm starting to have conversations with Indigenous people bringing these plant opportunities to life, I actually came across and have started to work with the great-great-granddaughter of Jerry, who led the Hahn expedition. Now there's more to the story, but we first needed some brand ambassadors because we were going to target some oil seeds first. And I only know that I need to get these two guys talking because Jack and the Beans talk. Sorry, that's really bad. But back to this journey. Another really cool plant that I've done some research on previously is called Duboisia moropioides, which is an indigenous plant all over Australia that has been used as a stimulant to help people travel thousands and thousands of kilometres and journey around Australia. And it comes with so many medicinal benefits to it, which includes it being a stimulant, motion sickness, and this powerful drug called scopolamine. And so you've got an alkaloid company at Kingaroy that now have set up a cartel to try and protect the price of this product without any benefit from the people that have used this as a stimulant for 70,000 years. When we were doing research on this plant up at Lakeland, so 350 odd kilometres north of Cairns, it was that good. We used to do all our trials and harvesting. At the end of the day, I felt like a bit of a drug mule because we had our car loaded up with samples of this Duboisia, but I swear that trip only took 30 minutes. And it was as good as Red Wing without the complication of Red Bull without the wings. But they are some seriously potent plants out there. So as we start to look forward, there's a real opportunity for us to come together as a nation to realise what that means as enterprise creation for all of us. Through projects that universities are working on in Australia called Uniquely Australian Food, for example. Can you imagine going to places like Woolies and Coles, where you can get gluten-free, Mexican, halal, kosher? Now, I've got nothing wrong about that, but we don't have a uniquely Australian aisle in any of our supermarket shelves. Wouldn't that be cool? I think about that often because I take my dog for a walk most mornings, and some of the creeks that border our estate is like walking down aisle number 7 of Coles, where it's full, literally full of foods and medicines. Oscar and I, we went for a walk last Saturday morning. They've just opened up the first leg of the track to Wangedi, which will take it from Palm Cove to Port Douglas, which will be an exciting trip. What I did learn is that once you get into the national park, you can't take your dog for a walk on that track. So as we were walking back to the car park, this guy running past us turned around and yelled, "Hey, there's no dogs allowed on this track." And I said, "Mate, the national park is half a kilometre ahead of us. We're not going to the national park, we know that." He said, "No, there's a sign right back at the start that says, no dogs allowed." And I said, "Just bugger off and go and have a good day. It's Saturday morning, enjoy yourself." Anyway, I started to walk off and got this yank on the edge of the lead, and Oscar yells out and says, "Mate, I can't even read English, leave us alone." So I let the guy keep going on his track, and I turned around to Oscar and I said, "I didn't know you couldn't read English." Anyway, back to what I was really talking about. We didn't find any really cool plants there either. Found a nice walking track, we'll never be back again. But some of the plants that we're working on now is to go into what we call a fast-moving consumer good market with health benefits built into it and functionality. So you'll see it as you're driving along the road, past the Strand, as a landscaping tree, something like black bean, massive big pod. That traditionally was used as an energy plant, full of energy, high in protein and fibre, but to make it edible they used to wash a toxin out of it by leaching it in the creek for 3 to 5 days. That toxin has now been used in antifungal treatments for the treatment of HIV. There's current research going on of anti-diabetic components in it. And then in the middle there's a photo of Auntie and Uncle Aya and Phyllis, where I went up onto the Curima Range and collected some Herbert River cherry, and that's Nicole, who is Jerry, the tour guide on the Hahn expedition. We're working on some of the incredible chemistry that's inside that Herbert River cherry, mixing that with black beans as a flour and making functional cakes and biscuits that are not just healthy and gluten-free, but also have a medicinal benefit. So as we get towards what will be an exciting time, fingers crossed, with the release of Back to the Future 4, it gives us a chance to think about, if we could travel back in time, what would we change? We've got to make sure that we continue to share those stories and take them on a path, because where we're going, we may not need roads. But sometime in the future, if my studies go well, my name will be Dirty Dr. Harry. Thank you very much.